chat where I have to wait for it to suddenly appear on my screen. Hey, Papa G, evening. Hope you're well. So I'm just waiting for the YouTube system, as you guys see it, to suddenly tally up with what's on my camera. Oh, look, adverts. Martin Kemp from Spandau Ballet looking a whole lot better than I do. Obviously, this is a tailored advert for me. Let's just skip the ads there, shall we? Very good. And this wonderful chunk that you're getting at the moment gets deleted. Once it gets uploaded onto YouTube for people to watch at a later date, I then go in and crop it. So this could well make the end of year crappy bits of video montage. Who knows? Right, we're on. We're up and running. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I hope you're safe and well. I hope life is treating you good. I'm wearing my new Dingwall t-shirt this evening, courtesy of Sheldon Dingwall himself when he was over here in London a couple of weeks ago. Thank you very much, Sheldon. Much appreciated, and a very good fit as well. Thank you. Which wasn't bad. He got the size right. I hope you're all safe and well out there. This is live chat number 14 here on the channel, and you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is becoming a regular thing on Wednesday evenings now, and it seems to be working, which is a big relief to me, because a lot of the live chats previously had kind of sort of, some are done well and some are done not so well, and we tried to keep them at a regular time. And then when I started to follow the YouTube analytics, it started to go all over the place, and it was picking weird days and weird times, which didn't really work. So I'm hoping this is working for you guys out there. I can see we've got 2 people already. We've got Stacey from North Carolina in the US. Good evening, my love. Hope you're well. And Papa G, thank you for joining us. I think that's 2 weeks on the trot for you, sir. I'll be paying in loyalty points soon. How did you like the fan frets on the Dingwall? We're already into the chat here, guys, so off we go. Right, Dingwall fan frets. I know some people have a real problem getting used to playing with fan frets. I've never had a problem at all, and the way I went about it, I followed Lee Sklar's advice. If you're going to follow a bass player and their advice, Lee Sklar's a fairly good person to follow. He said, and he was quite right, play it as you would play a bass. And if you're looking at the neck and you're playing it in your hands, and in fact, let me grab a Dingwall and then we can talk about this as we're doing it. Go. So his advice was, when you're playing a Dingwall with fan frets, it could be any make, we've got an NG2 here, the best way really is just to play as you would normally play. And when it comes to where to put your fingers, and when any of us start playing, we aren't sort of craning our heads over the fingerboard. We'll be looking along the side of the neck. Your finger placement when you're fretting a note is generally as close to the fret as you can be without being on top of the fret. Will do exactly that. And if you go with that, the natural curvature of your hand and your fingers will follow the shape of the fan frets. That's the whole idea of that system. And that's how I've always gone about it. So whenever I play, I don't tend to look on the front facing of the neck. That would make me feel seasick, actually. And under gig lighting, it can be, if you haven't got particularly great lighting on stage, it can really throw you off. So I just tend to work with the fret ends and the side position markers. So no different than if I was playing another bass, to be honest. And that's worked okay for me. I had one situation where I was playing a pub gig with a fairly noisy, rocky band, and I hadn't played 5-string for a while. And there were a couple of songs in the set, and what I realized was I was looking straight down. I think it might have been All Right Now with the bass break in the middle, which isn't particularly hard to play. But the fan frets completely threw me out. And what I should have done was just looked at the side of the neck. But because the bass was sitting against my sort of rib cage and stomach, I could see the sort of diagonal line of the fret, and it completely threw me. It was strange. But otherwise, apart from that one episode, I've never had a problem. And I like it. You know, I'm a big fan of Dingwalls. I think they're great basses, really well made, well put together. Customer support is excellent. If you have a problem with your Dingwall, which sounds like a medical condition, but I can assure you it's not. If you have a problem or an issue, if you go on a Facebook and go on any of the Dingwall groups or the fan groups, fan pages, and explain what your issue with the bass is, if someone there can't sort it out, invariably Sheldon Dingwall will appear at some point, and he will basically try and solve the problem for you there and then. And if it's something that needs to, either the bass needs to go back to Dingwall in Canada or something else, they will then give you an email address, and you could take the conversation up, so you're not having to sort of go through some long-winded social media conversation. You can do it one-to-one by email or some sort of chat program or app. But yeah, absolutely stand by Dingwall basses and the company generally. Very good. Tell me, reply to me here on the chat window. Papa G, have you got a Dingwall? Have you played fan fret basses? What's your experience? You know, has it caused you a problem, or do you get on with them okay? Or were you just kind of asking me for my experience? But I have no issue with fan fret basses whatsoever. I think they're great, and I find them very comfortable to play. No problem for me. Okay. Let's see, Stacy, fabulous yellow. Yeah, apparently this is called Ferrari yellow, and this is one of the run of solid colors that they did for the NG2s, and basically they followed sort of car and motorbike colors. So I think there was it Ducati green, Ferrari yellow, and there was a white, there was a black, a red, it might have been Ferrari red as well, white, and then we got orange, purple, and a couple of others. But I think, as far as I'm aware, this colour's now been discontinued, or certainly on this model, you can't buy a Ferrari yellow 5-string NG2 unless it was a custom order, perhaps. But yeah, great, lovely basses. I like it a lot. Let's just put that back in the rack. So yes, so live chat number 40. I hope you're all safe and well. For people who've attended live chats before here on the channel, I'll do a quick bit of housekeeping, tell you what's coming up on the channel, what's been over the last week, what's coming up. And then I open the floor up to you guys. So if you want to ask questions or suggest a topic of discussion, then feel free. If you want to ask me anything about what's on the channel, any of the videos that I've posted up, if you want to ask me anything about Bass Player Magazine or Bass Guitar Magazine, I'm happy to answer those. If you want to sound me out for advice or ask my opinion on various pieces of equipment or basses or amps, pedals, accessories, gig bags, cleaning materials, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Stick it in the chat window and I'll reply as soon as I sort of see it pop up. So over the past week, videos that have gone up last Monday or Tuesday was the Vincent Accurate bass from Germany. And then on Thursday, or was it Friday? I'm losing track of the days during winter. Was the second Dingwall Hellboy soundbite demo video. So I'd already done one back in November, but I ended up with so much material that I couldn't fit it all or make a really great video with all of that footage crammed and shoehorned into one sort of demo video. So I did two. So the second one that I uploaded last week was basically pick playing. So using a pick to play that bass. So you would have got a demonstration of those tones and how that bass sounded playing with a pick, because I'd already done the fingerstyle one back in November. So that was last week, and we had a live chat video. This week I had planned on getting a video up on Monday. Well, that didn't happen because I've been bombed out the door with a few other things going on this week. So what I've decided to do is get tonight's live chat done. Hopefully then there will be a video tomorrow. If there isn't, there will be one Friday. So it's just which day I can get it finished and uploaded in time to sort of have maximum effect on the channel. And that could well end up being the first part of the Billy Sheehan interview. So if it is, what I intend to do then is make the next couple of videos after that will be part 2 and potentially part 3 if I end up turning it into a 3-segment video rather than just one long file. And you guys came and answered my question. I put a poll here on the chat last week, and then I also put it up on the community page, which is like the social media front end of the channel, and it got a resounding thumbs up for a multiple segment video rather than one big long hour and a quarter interview. So that's what it's going to be, several parts, and it's a cracker. I've been listening to it and started editing it down over the past couple of days, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. The other interviews with Billy Sheehan that are already on the channel are audio, obviously, from back in the days when I interviewed him for Bass Guitar Magazine. So at the time, I didn't know I was going to do a YouTube channel, so it wasn't videoed. But this interview last year, I thought, well, do you know what? Let's do it as a video interview rather than just an audio or a phone call or an email. And it's come out great. Looks great, sounds great. He's got lots of wisdom to impart, lots of information, and I hope you're going to enjoy that. So hopefully we should get the first bit up tomorrow, but if not, it'll be Friday. And then we are rolling very fast towards February, so there's going to be more interview videos, bass reviews. I know a couple of you have said, when are we going to get more bass reviews rather than soundbite demos? So it's just a case of time. The review videos take up a good 7 or 8 hours to pull together, and that's aside from filming and everything else. So they are far more time intensive than the soundbite demos, so just bear with me on that. What you'll probably find is once I get one bass review video, there will be like a whole load of them going one after the other, because I'm then sort of the equipment's then set up to roll and just do all of that editing and pulling together. And then we've also got the new series, which I know I keep mentioning. I don't want to give the game away on what I'm doing, but I'm hoping that should start appearing in February as well. There we go. That's what's happening on the channel. And I had someone mention the other day about the memberships option that's now going to become available now that the channel's monetized. So memberships will be up and running soon. I've just got to sort of decide exactly what the content will be and whether there will be different levels of membership or just one straightforward method of membership and everyone gets the same content on that. So I will endeavor to get that nailed down in the next couple of days. Hopefully if I could roll that out at the start of February, that'd be great. Papa G, I learned on Dingwall combustion during lockdown. Very good. Not a bad bass to be learning on. Dingwall is my only bass. I agree with the All Right Now issue, getting to the 17th fret accurately. Yeah, it was, that gig was a lot of fun, but I didn't realize that song was going to pull the rug from under my feet. And it was really dark where I was playing. So thankfully those necks and the fingerboard's maple. So it was black dots on a maple board. So it was sort of not too bad in terms of visibility. But it caught me out. It really caught me out and threw me a real curve. It was like my fingers were going to places where if I was playing that solo normally, it wouldn't even been an option or a problem. But I did it and it was like, this doesn't feel right. And I was like questioning myself as I was playing it. I was thinking, this isn't right. But anyway, that was a few years ago. I learned my lesson from that. Make sure if you're going to take a 5-string and a fan fret 5-string to a gig and you haven't played 5-string for a while, just run the set a couple of times before. I thought my 5-string playing was perfectly fine up till that point, but I realized I hadn't played it for a while and hadn't played the dingwall either. So it was a bit daft of me to take that in the bag. I had a different bass with me as well, but the first set had gone so fine I didn't question it, and then suddenly came across that problem mid-set in the second set. But there we go, not to worry, you live and learn, you know, this is how you learn these things. No, hey, if you learn on a dingwall combustion, it's not a bad bass to be learning on, and I hope you put all that lockdown time to good use. So I like to see someone who's learning stuff while we were in lockdown. This was my my guilty pleasure during lockdown, get a YouTube channel up and running. So there we go. So if you've got any other questions, feel free to post them up. So tonight's topic of conversation, so 2 weeks ago we did precision basses, split coil equipped bass guitars, and the pros and cons, why you would use one, why you wouldn't use one. We did the same thing last week with Music Man Stingrays. So this week, unless you guys have any topics of bass connected conversation you would like to talk about or discuss, and feel free to post them up, and I'll try and integrate them into what I'm about to sort of talk about. So I thought we'd talk about custom basses, getting your own bass built, how to do it, why you would want to do it, the pitfalls, and Lord knows there's plenty of those. I've known many a bass player spend lots of money on one custom bass, and I've known many buy lots of custom basses, and you begin to think they're chasing their tail and they don't actually know what they want. Unfortunately, with custom basses, depending on the manufacturer or the luthier or whoever's building the bass for you, some of these companies have so many options, it's very hard to know actually what you want. And I've come across a couple of guys in my travels who basically money was no option, and they thought they knew what they wanted, and when they went in to spec the instrument with the builder, they actually ended up coming away with a completely different instrument to what they had originally hoped they were going to have built. And what they thought they were going to have at the end of it was not the bass of their dreams. But it's a bit late when that bass has been built and it's sat there waiting for you to collect it, and you've got to pay the bill, which could be several £1,000s or more, and it's not the bass you thought it was going to be. And I have heard stories of guys who've gone down this road, and they've been involved in the build, and they've sort of had regular contact with the builder, and again, put their ideas down, said what they wanted to achieve, what they wanted the bass to sound like, how they wanted it to feel. And then when it's finally been presented to them, it's not what they thought it was going to be. So there are all these things to consider. So why would you want a custom instrument? Well, for a lot of bass players, and we'll take guitarists out of the equation here because that's a different instrument entirely, but with bass, there's so many characteristics to an instrument. There's so many sort of intricacies. There's so many sort of things that need to be addressed. So you're looking at, how does the bass fit you to wear? How heavy is it? How does it sound? How does it play? Are you looking for a bolt-on neck? Are you looking for a through neck? Are you looking for a 4-string, 5-string, 6-string, 7-string, 8, 12? You know, how many strings do you want on this? What sort of electronics package do you want? Do you know what you want? I mean, many's the time I've had people say to me, oh, what should I go for? You know, what would be a good preamp to match with these pickups, or which pickups would match with the circuit? It's very hard to know. I mean, are you looking for one instrument that's going to do everything? And I don't actually think that exists. I look at the racks, you know, it's if I thought there was one bass could do everything, I could have saved myself a few bob. And I'm not convinced there is one instrument that does everything. Now, some players are quite happy with just one bass, and that's their voice, and that's all they're ever going to use, and I admire people that can do that. for the stuff I've done over 20, I lose track, it's 27 years this year that I've been full-time professional musician, that I've never come across one instrument that does everything. And this is why I have multiple instruments here, and they all sound different. Even I might have a couple of models or a couple of examples of the same model. They don't sound the same. Went into this discussion 2 weeks ago when we were talking about precisions. I've got 3 here, 4 if you count precision light, and none of them sound the same. So that's the precisions. Another example would be 20 years ago this year, 2002. At one point I had 5 Status Graphite Series 2000 basses, which in theory should sound the same or very closely sound the same because of their construction, the circuitry and what have you. None of those 5 sounded the same. And it wasn't until I had them in my possession running through the same rig with the same settings and the same strings, and you could A/B them and compare them up against each other. And they didn't sound the same. So I'm a firm believer that you take each instrument on its merits, and you could go in a shop and pull 10 examples of exactly the same bass and line them up on stands. You might find there's a couple that sound very similar, but invariably there will be characteristics and sounds in those instruments that set them apart. So going into a custom build, you kind of need to have a reference point. You've got to have, what am I trying to achieve? What am I looking for in this instrument? So if you get the build right and the design right, you can play around with circuitry and pickups as much as you want. Same with hardware. Different bridges, different tuners, how heavy those items are. Some people still swear by heavy hardware. A lot of players don't want heavy hardware. They want to make the instrument as light as possible. Are you going to go for a chambered instrument? Because not only will that affect the weight and balance, it could well affect the tone as well. The wood you're going to have, you know, are you looking for a one-piece solid body? Are you looking for a multi-laminate body? Are you looking for a fancy top? What timber do you want the body core to be? Are you looking at mahogany? Are you looking at alder, maple, perhaps walnut? There's lots of different options. So you kind of got to sit there with your pen and your piece of paper and just write down, you know, these are the options I like. These are the things I want. Okay, well, how are you going to achieve that? So when I did my custom build, which I did with Bernie Goodfellow, Bernie gave me several examples of his different basses, and I took them away and used them on gigs. And there were certain characteristics of, so at that time there were 2 models, which was the Rumor and what was the classic at the time, which became the Spitfire. So I can show you similar examples. So this will give you an idea. So this would be the Spitfire, although this wasn't the one he gave me. This is one I bought later. So it's kind of Bernie's take on a jazz bass, but without single coil pickups. These are Bernie's designed humbuckers. So I borrowed a Spitfire, or a classic as it was at the time, and tried that, and that was fine. Lovely, really great instruments, no problems, loved the circuit. And at that time he was just starting to standardize that the instruments would have the same circuitry and controls. So the classic before that had the 4 in a row super jazz layout. So you would have either 2 volumes and then 2 tones, or you could have a master volume, pickup pan, stacked bass and treble and a mid. That was an option. Or you could just have bass and treble. But he'd already redesigned the Rumor electronics at that point, and people were then asking, can I have the Rumor electronics in my Spitfire? So that's what this has. So you've got volume, pickup pan, and then you've got treble, mid, bass, and then the parallel series switch. So that's what became an option. So from that, I was quite happy to go with the Rumor electronics. Just bear with me a moment. So this is a Rumor. So this was the body shape, but I like the Rumor circuitry that was in the room at that time. I wasn't going for the classic or the Spitfire circuitry. So that's the Rumour. So this is the actual finished bass that was my custom build. So he gave me a bass that Bernie's got, which is a Rumour sprayed in powder blue gloss finish. The actual bass is made from various pieces of wood, but it's what he uses as a demo model for people to try, to get an idea of what they want. And from that, I was able to deduce that I wanted a bigger body than what he was offering for the Rumour, because at that time I felt the horns were quite skinny. And some players liked it, but it wasn't for me. I wanted something that sort of felt a bit more substantial. So when it came to designing my bass, I actually, in the workshop, we had a huge piece of paper, and he said, right, stick the original bass on. So we put this powder blue Rumour on the bench and on the paper. And he said, right, draw around it. That's our template to work from. And so from that point, now draw what you want. So from that, I literally said, right, okay, well, look, let's add on an inch. I think it was an inch, or it might have been like 1.5 centimeters or something. And we just extended the body horns and some of the bout on the body. So this bass, the actual size and dimensions of this bass body, I designed. No one else was asking for that. Everyone was quite happy with the Rumour body as he was designing it. But that was my design. I just said I'd like about an extra inch or an extra centimetre and a bit around. So it actually meant the bass was bigger than a standard Rumour, but that's what I wanted. And that's what we went for. So it wasn't a big deal for him, because once I'd drawn it out on the paper, it was there ready to go. So that's what he was going to build the bass around. And then from that point, it was a case of picking out the top, deciding on the timbers. So I got some walnut in there to warm up the tone. So we have a swamp ash body with walnut and maple stringers. So I've got 3 different types of maple in there. I've got a bird's eye, flame, and a quilted. So I've got all 3 of them. I have something that was very lucky to this piece of wood. I've got a knot in the wood, which we always call a gunshot wound, Bernie and I. And yeah, wanted a gloss finish. And then when we got onto the top, so actually, if you look at the sandwich, I've got swamp ash, walnut, quilted maple on the top. The actual colour was going to be an aqua teal. It looks greener on camera than sometimes it is. And actually, under certain stage lights, it starts to go more blue. Bernie refers to it as kingfisher blue. Some photos you may have seen of this, it looks really green. It just changes under light. Pickups are Bernie's own, Kent Armstrong, I think, design. No, Bernie designed them, Kent Armstrong built them, I think. He will tell you if I'm wrong. ABM bridge, which allows me to change string spacing. Originally, I was going to have abalone blocks up the fingerboard, but in the end, we didn't go with that. And it has Martin Sims LEDs in here, as you can see. And I have them fibre optically up the side as well. Let's see, I think circuitry wise it was slightly a little more boosted than the standard Rumour circuit, I think. But we designed this in 2003, 2004, so 18 years old this year. The memory's a little hazy, but it's standard Rumour controls. So we've got the LED switch and then the parallel series switch. And I wanted shallow tuners rather than Bernie's shallow and his own wooden controls. And then we've got the lit up, the LED GB moniker in the top. And that was my custom build. And then he signed the back of the headstock, and it's designed for me and built for me and all of that. So that was my choice, really. And it came out great. There were a couple of issues, a couple of things as we were working through it. Originally, it was sprayed a different colour, which wasn't the colour I'd asked for. which didn't go down well on the day, because when he said, "There's your bass," and I went, "No, it's not the color. That's not the color I asked for." So it went back and got resprayed. But like I say, I think it came out pretty well. And I've used this gig on used this bass on loads of gigs for years. It was my my number one go-to. And then when I started doing a lot of work abroad, especially in hot countries, I started to use the Status Empathy more because of the graphite neck. I just didn't want to have to be taking Allen keys and doing that every gig. Not that the neck's got a problem, it has no problem, but any wooden neck going into 46-degree situations and then loads and loads of aircon on top, it's going to start having a problem. Although I have to say, I did take it with me on one trip to Israel in Eilat, and it was the February trip, so it was a cooler period, so it would have been sort of high 20s, low 30s, and the neck wasn't bad once I got there and I set it up. It stayed pretty stable throughout. But so that was my thing. So regarding custom builds, so I think once you've got the basis of what you want to do and what you want to achieve, it really does come down to what your budget is, because there's no point designing an instrument that's all bells and whistles with everything, all the custom features you want, but you don't have the money to pay for it. And I have seen some bass players go bankrupt, but they were chasing an ideal in their head and they just kept throwing money at the thing. And it was like, it's diminishing returns. You've told me what you're trying to achieve, but I'm not seeing it. I don't see in the finished article, because they would send me pictures of their builders going through, and I'm thinking that's not going to get the sound you were after. And obviously the choice of woods, choice of pickups, choice of circuitry will all affect the sound and the tone. But until you've got that thing in your hands, you don't know how it's going to sound. And even if you were to go to the luthier and play one of their other instruments that is similar to what you want, your one may get close as an approximation to what that existing instrument is, but you can't guarantee that's how it's going to sound. And sometimes it can just be the cut of wood, it can be how the pickups are wound, it can be something on the circuit, and then you have to start thinking, well, do I want to have circuitry and pickups that I can modify, as keep going back to the manufacturer and say, can I have a bit more mid in there? Can I have sweepable mids? Could I have more bass EQ on the circuit? Can I have more treble? These are all possibilities, but some manufacturers don't. They'll do the woodworking and the build and then put in sort of standard electronics packages from any of the circuitry companies and pickup companies. So is that what you want to go with? There are so many options and so many variables, but the two things you've really got to look at is what is your budget and what you're prepared to spend, and have a basic idea of how you want the thing to look and how you want it to sound. And those timbre choices will make a fairly significant, or they will have a significant effect on how that finished instrument is going to sound. And then once you get the thing and you get it out there and you're doing gigs, that's where you're going to discover all the little intricacies. And I wouldn't be surprised if you buy a custom build, that within a month or two, you're probably going to be knocking on that luthier's door saying, can we just change this? Can we just change that? Can we tweak that? Can we do that? Can we move that bit forward? Can we move that bit backwards? How about if we... And again, some manufacturers will allow you to do that, and some will just go, it's finished. Get out there and play it. And that's the point then where some people then go, oh, well, I need to have another bass built. And then are you building another bass with that luthier, or are you going to go to someone else? And some people become really big fans of one manufacturer and their creations, and other people like one example from each of these sort of custom manufacturers. And that's not a bad way to go, because then you're going to get different basses with different sounds, different voices. And who knows, maybe you'll discover a sound along that journey that just really floats your boat, that you maybe had missed out on or hadn't considered previously. But these are all possibilities. Let's have a look at the messages. I've got some messages here. So Stacey, as you've reviewed hundreds of basses for Bass Guitar Magazine, she's right, about 500, I think. It's close to 500, could be more. And narrowing it down to Dingwall models, do you have a favorite bass you've played for reviewing purposes, or maybe demoed at a bass show? I tell you, if we narrowed it down to Dingwall models, I played a Z3 in, get the year right, 2016. It was a Z3 in a really amazing wooden top that was kind of purpley grey, but it had like really sort of unique figuring. I could dig out the review, and in fact, trying to think, I could probably link through to it on my personal Facebook page, or maybe I'll try and post it in the community tab at some point. Keep an eye out if you're watching this at a later date. I'll put a JPEG of the bass in and let you see it. And it was outstanding. It was really outstanding. The price tag was equally outstanding. I think it was about £4,000, 4,500. But it was a Z3, and it's amazing. It was like a hot rod, and it had tones that a lot of the other Dingwall basses that I'd played up to that point didn't necessarily have. I don't think it was built for anyone. It was at Bass Direct. I think Mark Stickley at Bass Direct. Hi, Mark. I'd probably just spec the bass as another example of what Dingwall were doing, but it was amazing, and I still hold that up. It was like, that is fabulous. It just played great. It felt great. The tones were just, it felt like one of those basses that was breathing. Sometimes you pick up a bass and everything's a bit forced and just doesn't sound great. But this Dingwall just breathed. You played a note and it just sort of sustained, and the note bloomed. I think it might have had a Wengy fingerboard coupled with a Wengy neck. I could be wrong. I can't remember. It was 6 years ago. I can't remember every bass I've reviewed. But that was fabulous. And I stand by the Combustions and the NG2s, NG3s. They're great for the price. I think they do. They cover a lot of mileage. But obviously, if you then want to get into the custom route and start working through the different ranges that Dingwalls have, obviously the prices go up accordingly. So, you know, right, what's that? Or perhaps your fave is the Ferrari Yellow Gem you own. It was more a case of I tried or I reviewed several NG2s and NG3s, and I liked what that format did, and I liked the sounds with the dark glass tone capsule that bass was offering. And I played some Combustions as well that had EMG circuitry, and they were great as well. But I just really, there was something about the NG2, just, I don't know, just floated my boat. And I wanted it in the 5-string format, because then you're getting all the benefits of the multi-scale length, you know, the scale length. I'm trying to make it more complicated than it needs to be. The multi-scale length on the Dingwalls ranges from 34 inches to 37, and the benefits for the low B string are immense. And I wouldn't be the first person to say that the low B string on a Dingwall is a thing of beauty. But that bass just worked, and I have to say thank you to Mark at Bass Direct and Sheldon for sort of hooking me up with that. And you know, paying that one on the credit card was a very happy experience, because I knew exactly what they were all about. I wasn't buying something that I didn't know, and having spent some time reviewing them both in store and here at home. Like for a couple of Dingwall reviews, the basses came here, and I took them out on gigs and rehearsals, so I had time to play them here at home, and that's what ultimately influenced my decision to buy that, because I've been able to play it through various amps and cabinets, play it with different bands, so you know, I could see and hear what that was going to be capable of doing, and no regrets on that front. Great basses indeed. But yeah, so tell me, you know, what dingwalls have you seen? Models, colors, what's worked for you? I know you like purple guitars, and they've done some great purple finishes, especially the swirl. There's a swirl purple that they do, which is great, and the candy purple looks great as well. And the Lee Sklar finishes, those colors, woo, a man with taste, I have to say. So yeah, so you know, you guys out there, if you're tuning in late or watching this at a later date, we're talking about custom basses tonight. So if you've got any experience of having your own bass built, or going through the process of ultimately having your dream bass built, but for some people, they've got over that hurdle and they just have custom basses built as they require them. It's not to build the dream bass, it's just another option to their bass playing arsenal. If you're enjoying the video, please hit the subscribe button below. Give the video a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate that. And also, if you like notifications for when I post up new videos and I'm doing live chats or put any content on the channel, hit the notification bell, and there will be 3 options. You can either have none, so you don't get any notifications, that's fine. You can have some, which will bring you the highlights, I think, and then you can have all. So every time I post up a video, which is generally 2 or 3 a week, or post a message on the community tab, or I've got a video premiere coming up, you'll get a little notification and it'll tell you. So that's all good. And actually, while we're doing that sort of channel housekeeping, for anyone that wants to contribute to the channel and help keep it moving, help me buy more equipment to produce more videos, potential studio hiring so that I can do certain things that I want to do video wise for the channel. If you're watching this, on the right hand side, you're seeing me do all my stuff. There's a chat window. At the bottom of the chat window are 3 icons. There's an emoji, smiley face, there's a $sign, and there's a graph. So the $sign allows you to make super chat payments, so you can actually contribute to the channel. So this all comes into the melting pot that is Brooks's Bass Corner, and that money gets used to buy new equipment. It allows me to advertise and promote the channel, and it also allows me to hire studio space for certain videos. So if you want to contribute, it can be as much or as little as you want. There's a dollar symbol there on the chat window. You hit that and YouTube will do its thing and it will tell you how you pay. But if you want to contribute to the channel, it's very much appreciated, and I will endeavor to produce more top class quality video content for you. And as I said earlier, as we get towards February, hopefully I'll have the membership system set up very soon as well, which will allow you to purchase a membership either at one level or different levels, and you will get certain content that other people don't get. Again, I'm trying to work out exactly what I can do and what I can offer. So keep checking in on the channel, and details of that will become apparent as time goes on. I'm just going to grab a drink. Bear with me. Thank you very much. So I can see we've got about 6 or 7 people here watching the live chat. So thank you very much for joining us, guys and girls, wherever you are in the world. Hope you're safe and well, whether it's morning, afternoon or evening. I hope life is treating you well. Thank you for joining us. We're talking about custom basses tonight, having your custom bass built. So here in the UK, I mean, we have many custom bass builders, custom manufacturers. So we're looking at people like JD, based in Birmingham. We're looking at WOW here in the south. We're looking at Goodfellow, GB basses, GB guitars down in Brighton. There's Status Graphite in Colchester. We've got Mike Walsh at Iceni Zoot. We've got Shuka. We've got ACG, Alan Cringine up in Scotland, I think. And we've got Overwater up in Cumbria. And there are various other custom bass builders around the UK, all producing great quality basses. I forgot to mention Viv Wilcock. Hope you're well. If you're watching, sir, you'll find a review of a Viv Wilcock short scale bass here on the channel. It was one of the first basses I reviewed. And I should also point out for people watching and catching up at a later date, underneath this video or video windows, a description box. All links regarding basses and manufacturers and their channels and their websites will all be in there. I've started now to sort of do that after the video gets uploaded. So anything that I talk about or I refer to in a link, or that there might be a video of on the channel, there'll be a link to it in that description box. So if you go and watch last week's live chat, you'll see in that description box a big long list of links. But if there's something I've referred to and there's a point to it, you'll find that link in there. So I hope that sort of helps you out. Okay, bass. Hey, say bass. Absolutely. How did I forget Martin? Goodness me, sorry. Martin Peterson at the Bass Gallery. He produces the Say basses, and they are truly excellent. I don't have one here. I have reviewed several in the past, and I've been aware of Martin's work probably since about 1991, I would imagine. And the first person I saw playing a Say bass would have been Malcolm Foster, who was the bass player for Simple Minds at the time. And he had I'm trying to remember what the model was, basic headless, and it was almost Status-like, but not. A very dark timbered wood and black hardware, and he used it on the Real Life tour, and it was left an impression on me. And I've known plenty of people that have owned Say basses with very good things to say about them. So Martin, if you're watching, evening. John at the gallery as well. John builds Chapter guitars and also does a lot of the bass stuff as well. Fine gentlemen of the bass parish. I haven't seen them in a while, so I hope you're all safe and well, and we'll see you soon. Alex Alex Carter, bass face, very good. An original, so that's what Malcolm Foster's was, called an original. I'm sure if you search YouTube, actually a good example would be Simple Minds at the Barrowlands 1991, and he used it on various gigs on that tour. It sounded fabulous. I think he sold it on. You might be able to tell me, Alex. I think he either part exchanged it or sold it on prior to him moving to New Zealand 10-15 years ago. I could be wrong, I'm not sure. Alex would know. Alex used to work at the gallery in Camden, so he's seen plenty of these basses come and go, and the people that played them. So yeah, so yes, obviously Say basses. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's just so many independent luthiers here in the UK. It's hard to keep up sometimes, and we see a lot of it obviously through Bass Player magazine and Bass Guitar magazine, and new things coming all the time. And I've just remembered Andrew Taylor Cummings at Anaconda. If you're watching, sir, hope you're well. And you'll find some Anacondas on the YouTube channel. Again, they were some of the first basses I reviewed here on the channel. I think we looked at the Essence. There were three models, passive jazzes. 2 were active, 1 was passive. But yes, very we're quite lucky to have some seriously high quality basses being made in this country, and has been the case for 40 years, you could argue. And probably even further back than that, going into the 70s. But you know, during the 80s, custom basses became all the rage, and as active electronics became more the norm, and through neck basses and a lot of the sort of bass exotica that we know and love sort of came out of that decade, and people suddenly said, well, I want that feature, but I want that, and I want that. And if they weren't finding it in a model that was on the market, they would go and have that bass made. And Alex actually here would be a fine man to talk about the many varied custom basses you've had built over the years. I've seen most of them. I've certainly seen most of them and heard about many of them. I played a few as well. And actually Alex was one of the first people I saw to have a Lakeland 5-string back when you were working at the Bass Centre. Not sure if it was built for you, was it built for Pino Palladino? Could be wrong. I remember he'd had one on order, so you can tell the story, but it was a game changer. I remember playing that, and you pulled it out of its case, and it was like, wow, that neck is beyond belief. It was very, very, it was a broad, so I remember a broad fingerboard, but the neck profile was exceptionally slim, like really slim, and it was a pleasure to play. And not all Lakelands are like that, obviously, but that neck was right. Okay, Alex is replying. 97. Was it 97? I'm sure I remember. Well, maybe it was built in 97, but I remember playing it in the Bass Centre with you when I came back from a trip to Moscow, and that would have been 98. So, and before that, I'd never really heard of Lakelands. They hadn't quite gone through their big promotional push at that time, so it was like a new brand on the block, and obviously you guys at the Bass Centre were dealing with that, so it was good to see. Overwater, Stuart Goodman, good evening. Hi. Yes, I've mentioned Overwater. Chris May, if you're watching. I don't think Chris generally tunes into these sort of things, but I'm a big admirer. I've done a few reviews of his wares over the years. But actually, Alex, you could, I mean, talking about custom builds, I mean, God, the amount of instruments that came through the Bass Centre, because the Bass Centre were the UK distributors for so many of the brands, especially the ones in America. Stuff you couldn't generally get a hold of. People would place their custom order with the Bass Centre, and 6 months to a year later, these wonderful basses would suddenly appear out of nowhere. And I think I remember being there when Randy Hope Taylor ordered a G&L 5-string. And I think, again, you could tell me, didn't he bring it back? I think he only had it like a couple of days or a week, just didn't get on with it, and part exchanged it for something else. And again, back in this time, where were we, sort of late 90s, there was so much bass exotica, and a lot of it was going up for sale because Britpop was sort of order of the day, and everyone wanted Fender Precisions and Jazzes and Gibsons and Rickenbackers and stuff, that all these custom basses that had been built in the 80s and 90s were suddenly now being part exchanged for vintage Fender stuff. And I remember I could walk in a place like the Bass Centre in the gallery, and you just see something new every other day. It's crazy. But obviously you were working there, mate. You'd have seen all of this stuff coming and going on a daily basis. And I'm sure actually a lot of your collection at one point was made up of ex-part exchange models that people had brought in. But yeah, Patrick Eggle. Yeah. I think is he still the Patrick Eggle brand, or is it under Faith? Not Faith. I'm thinking of Barnes and Mullins because they're distributors for Faith. And I actually met Patrick when I went down there to pick up my Aguilar setup. You know, he threw me a curveball there. Brain's not working. Stu Goodman, I owned Randy Hope Taylor's 5-string Moon bass. Well, there's a bass to have. Goodness. And you've let it go? What was wrong with it? Why didn't you keep it? That's always a good question. Someone who's owned a great bass, why didn't you keep it? And I know I've had that question. Why did you get rid of the Mark King Stingray? I was made a very good offer, put it that way. And I thought I could replicate that Stingray with any other Stingray. Little did I know that 1989 Stingray couldn't be replicated by any other Stingray. And I've since learnt that late 80s, early 90s Stingrays have a certain feel and sound of their own anyway. My bad. But hey, there we go. You can't own everything. Hey, Alex. Although we've tried, I'm sure between you and I, we've owned quite a few. Too many bases let go, sadly. Yeah, I've not actually sold that many. I've probably, God, in my whole bass playing life, let's think, maybe 10, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, probably about 10. Not too much more than that. I generally find there are things I want, and I'll go and find as many examples of that thing, and if it's possible, play them all and then make a decision. But it's very rare that, you know, if you're after a specific model, that there's multiple examples available at any one time. But I tend to do my homework if there's something I want. Alex will tell you, you know, I was after an alembic, but I didn't know what model I wanted. And at the time, so it would have been 8 years ago, so Series 1, Series 2s rarely come up. And Alex facilitated me buying my 20th anniversary alembic. Well done, sir. And it's still here. And a great example of a great alembic. You know, it's not a Series 1 or a 2. It's not a Europa. It's not an Orion. It's not... God, I'm losing track of all the alembic models. It's not Persuader, but it does have its own sound and tone, and it's great. And the fact it's limited is even better in my book. And the one you can see next to it, obviously, is the Mark King Signature Standard. And actually, both of those basses, there will be a comparison video at some point of these two alembics. They do not sound at all alike. Now, if you look at them, let's see, can I do this? Try and get the camera back to... So you're looking at them and you're thinking, yeah, they're not going to sound too much different. Believe me, they do. Big time. They do not sound alike at all. The Mark King one is built 10 years after the 20th anniversary, and the tone and the actual circuitry and pickups are different. And it's a much slimmer neck. They're both long scale, so obviously you need to get a bus to get to the end of the fingerboard, but very different. But there will be a comparison video of those two at some point. I just need to crack on and do it. Let's see. Yes, you have tried, Alex. You have tried to own virtually every exotic bass brand out there. There can't be many left, surely. Stu Goodman owned a 1980 Well bass. Very good. One of 25. Had to let it go in the crash of 2008. Yeah. Been there. I sold 2 basses during the first lockdown, which I didn't necessarily have to sell to make ends meet. I could have kept hold of them, but they just kind of become a little redundant. One of them was a jazz bass that I used just before the first lockdown. I did the first of what was meant to be a very lucrative an ongoing Jimi Hendrix theatre show. We got the first show done. Second show got cancelled because the singer's back went. Third show got cancelled because of COVID, and we haven't done one since. So this would be February 2020. And as an experiment, I used a 62 reissue jazz for one set, and I used my Betsy bass from the bass center. This one here, you'll see a review and a soundbite on the channel. I'll put them in the description box. I used that on the second set, and I recorded audio and video of both sets. And when I listened back, the Betsy just blew the 62 reissue out of the water. In theory, it shouldn't have been too dissimilar, apart from the EMGs being in the Betsy, but the actual quality of tone was far more exceptional in the Betsy than it was on the 62 reissue. So I sold the 62 reissue. That was it. I just thought, well, there's no point. That is not going to make a sound that's going to make me happy, and the Betsy's doing all of that. So there we go. Surplus to requirements. And there was a Status 2000 Matrix as well, which I'd owned for a while. A friend had been after it for a while, and I was looking to get it resprayed, and actually the respraying costs were so high, I just thought, no, I'm not willing to sort of sink that amount of money into it. So that one went as well. But other than that, yeah, I haven't sold too many over the years. Usually I've either got something and found there's something else I want, so the most recent thing that's not floating the boat can go. But generally I find what I want, and then as long as that example does what I need it to do, you know, that's the way it's going to go. Number 42 bus. Yeah. Stacey, oh wow, very cool, thank you for sharing, pleasure. How many bases is too many, Stu? It's like, how many bases is enough? It's not. It's I mean, it's hard to equate. I see them as tools, okay, and lovely tools, and very nice to have them hanging on the wall. But there are quite a lot of these bases I've bought that have been either for specific projects. So like the Mike Dirnt Precision was bought because I was going to be in a Green Day tribute, which I did for 3 years. The Marcus Miller Jazz was bought because I've got my T-bass. Oh, it's in a gig bag at the end. I've got one of the original 15 T-basses that came out. Took it to a recording session. The guy said, I want a jazz bass. So the T-bass fitted that bill. I pulled it out of the case, started tuning it up, started playing. He went, what's that? I said, it's jazz bass. That's what he said. No, it's got to have Fender on the headstock. I said, we're recording a track. He said, yeah, it's got to be a Fender Jazz, man. I said, but this does a pretty good impression, whether it's in passive or active mode. No, it's got to be a Fender Jazz. So I ended up going and buying the Marcus Miller Jazz. Got that session done. He was happy with that. And that's now been in the arsenal for 18 years. No, 17. Yeah, 17. So that was bought for a specific reason. Let's think what else. The Ibanez I've got here, an ATK, that was bought because I got sick and tired of taking great basses abroad, and at customs they could just go walkabout and you might not see them for a few days. And I thought, you know what, I'm not willing to take the risk anymore. So the Ibanez ATK fitted that bill, got it for a very reasonable price. It does a great job, and that was the reason for buying that. I bought a Stingray. I think I discussed last week. Bought the Stingray because I just didn't have a bass that was capable of producing Stingray sounds after I'd sold the Mark King one. So that's why the blue one that you might have seen last week, and why that was bought. So yeah, bass phase, is your SB1000 fixed? It's at the same state as it was when we last spoke, sir. So Martin did his stuff. It's all set up. Plays great, sounds great. I've got the replacement circuit still here, but I'm very loath to stick the last. So basically I've had 2 of them and they've blown. And I'm loath to put the one that's last got sent to me in there in case it blows as well. And then I've got 3 busted preamps. But I need either the guy that builds those preamps to have a look at my bass to find out what's blowing or what's causing those preamps to blow. I did ask Martin to have a look at it. And this was a couple of years ago, he just said, I just don't have the time to go into it. I think they had so much work on at the gallery. It's one of those things I could put it in there and it'd still be there in 12 months time. They're still trying to work it out. I'm sure Martin could get to the bottom of it. I think I just need to get hold of an ARIA SB expert who can take that current circuit and pick up and wiring out, look at it and work out what is causing it to blow up the new preamps. Or it could just be those preamps were dodgy. I don't know. But because I'm not relying on that bass for loads of gigs, I'm happy to just go with it as is at the moment, mate, to be honest. Are you asking me that question because you might be interested in buying it, or are you just interested in knowing where we got in terms of progress? You can by all means reply to that. It's still here in the rack. Hasn't been out on any gigs for a while, actually. When did I last use that? 2016, I think. 2016. It was meant to do a Duran Duran tribute gig just before, or it would have been just after lockdown happened. But obviously those gigs didn't happen. Guess. I presume you want to buy it then. I don't know. I'm actually in the mood for selling it at the moment. I certainly don't need to. I'll let you know as and when I think that's ready to go. I'll let you know. And I thought you had a few. I thought you still had a few. Have you shifted them all on? Alex being quite the bass buyer. I've not known someone really. It's like a locust going through basses, isn't it? It's just like they come and they go very quickly. At Alex's house. What's your go-to workhorse bass? Stu, it depends what the project is, depends what the band is, and generally it depends what the vibe is, because if it's going to be something where something like a Status is going to freak them out, then I'll probably take Betsy and a Stingray, or Betsy and a Precision. Again, just depends what the gig is. If I'm being allowed to use what the hell I like, then generally I'll take my Status Empathy and either the GB or, let's think, what was I taking out before? Sometimes I would take the low. Actually, I should show you this. This isn't a stranger to the live chat. So this is Lodestone bass. These were made by Ashdown years ago. So they were originally Super Jazzes. If you can see behind me, there's a white one next to the Mike Dirnt Fender. And basically they're Super Jazzes. So they've got EMGs in them. A preamp that is not dissimilar to the Spectre tone pump, because they were made and assembled in the same factory that Euro LXs are in the Czech Republic. So this originally had a pair of EMG single coils in, and that circuit. And basically I went through a phase of buying up loads of these because I really like them. But I found a couple of the necks sort of moved about a bit. And I really wanted to have a bass that had the Sims Super Quad pickups in. I'd done a few reviews and used a few basses that had them. I didn't want to go down the Enfield route. I didn't like the body shape. It just wasn't for me. And I thought, well, do you know what? I was going to sell this bass. Why don't I set the pickups, change the preamp. So this has got a John East Uni pre to my own design. So it doesn't have a passive option. No, I don't think it's got passive tone control. I'm trying to remember now. So I think it's volume, pickup pan, bass and treble, mid sweep. I think I've got a push pull on the treble. That's right. So this allows me to get split coil, single coil, and humbucker tonal options out of each pickup. And obviously you can then pan across the pickups and however you want to do it. So if I'm not sure what a band sounds like or what's going to be order of the day, sometimes I'll take a Status and then take this as well. So if they want that sort of jazzy single coil sound, well, this is going to give you an approximation. If they want a P sound, it'll give that approximation. And if they want a Stingray sort of humbuckery sound, it will give that approximation. Sure, it doesn't sound like a 62 jazz or a 76 jazz. It is just an approximation. So, yeah. So, and I have no qualms in taking that to a pub or a function gig or anything else. It doesn't matter if it gets battered up. I tend not to take things like the Alembics, obviously, on pub and club gigs, but I'll try, if I know I'm on a function or a venue or somewhere like a Butlins holiday camp where the stage is going to be huge with decent monitoring, decent sound system, I'll happily take the Alembics because they just sound amazing. And I don't get to use them often enough because they're not suitable to everything. But if I can, I will. But yeah, go-to workhorse, the Empathy, the GB, the custom that we were talking about earlier. That comes out on lots of gigs. And actually, that's been my main bass since we came out of lockdown last summer. I've done virtually all of the Uncle Funk shows with the GB. I used the Dingwall on a couple of shows. I still need to work on the EQing with the Dingwall because it's kind of it's almost like too modern for a lot of the Uncle Funk stuff. But I just love playing it. It sounds great, and the low B is very helpful for some of those synth lines. But so yeah, so I'm not a creature of habit. I won't just stick with one or two basses. It will be a case of what's the gig, what are the songs, does the band have like a vibe or a look, and if that's not important, then I'll pick whatever I like. But just depends really. And and I'll rotate them. I won't just stick with one bass all the time. I'll sometimes, and certainly when you join a new band or you're working with a new band, sometimes I'll bring 3 or 4 basses to like a rehearsal and just try things. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And you're trying to find your sound within that band. When you've been with a band for like 15 years, it's very easy to know where you slot in the frequencies. But when you're depping a lot, different bands will sound different. And different basses are going to sound different through amplification, or whether you play through IEMs. So there's all that as well. Yeah. So there we go. We're up to date with the messages. Keep it coming, guys. This is like the most interactive chat we've had in ages. So you got any questions for me? Any questions about the channel? Any questions about any of the videos? Stuff you would like to see on the channel? Any videos on specific basses you would like to see? Anything that you're looking at in the shops that you think you'd like some advice on, or my opinion of, or anything that's coming out? If I've reviewed it for the magazine, I might be able to give you a heads up on something. So I'm just going to grab a quick drink while we're waiting for some more questions. Very good. I hope you're all safe and well out there. This is great. Stacey, you could learn a lot reading this chat today. I know Shuka offers bass building classes. Yeah. Imagine building your own custom bass yourself. I wouldn't trust me with a chisel. Put it that way. Ask the other half about putting pictures up. It's not, no, leave that sort of stuff to the people that can do it. Yeah, not for me. I won't be building my own custom bass in terms of building. I'll spec it, but I'll let someone else build it. Amp reviews. Yes, good question. Okay, so at the moment, there's only one amp review on the channel, which is the Trace Elliott Elf, which I did in December 2020. The reason there aren't loads of amps and amp reviews on here at the moment, although that will be changing, there is a few penciled in, is that I can do amp reviews, and the best way of conveying that is to obviously DI it. But people always want to hear how a cabinet sounds. Well, the only way you can do that is obviously to mic it up. And the problem is, because a lot of the videos I'm doing are here at home, I can't necessarily turn it up. So I can give you a mediocre sort of reflection of how a cabinet sounds, but it's very difficult to do it and do it properly. Because also, when we're recording audio from a cabinet that's mic'd up, it's going to get compressed when the video is rendered. And then it gets compressed again when it gets uploaded to YouTube. So by the time you hear it on YouTube, that's not the sound that I've recorded out of the cabinet. So I've been sort of a bit wary of doing that. I may do it if I think it can generate enough views. And obviously what I'm trying to do with the channel here is build it and get traction. And what I'm having to do is a lot of keyword research on the videos that I'm producing to make sure they fit within certain percentage boundaries. So are these things that people are searching for and looking for on YouTube? And also, what's the competition? Now with amplifiers, every time a new amplifier comes out, there's hundreds of videos about it. So I've got to pick which ones I do. And I kind of wouldn't say I got lucky with the Trace Elf one, which is it's the most viewed video on the channel. It's done over 5,000 views at the moment. It kind of fitted the time people wanted to spend watching it. And because at that point, when I released it, the Trace combos had only just come out. So people were searching for that review or demos of that actual amp. So I've got to be sort of careful in terms of what I review and how I review it. So there will be more amp reviews, and it could well be that there's suddenly, once I start doing one or two of them, there'll be a string of them. So just keep watching the channel. I know you do. So, you know, thank you very much for that. So there could well be like a string of bass amp reviews. But for the moment, if I do that, then you're going to be getting DI signals rather than out of a cabinet, I think. just for sheer audio quality, because like I say, when it gets up to YouTube, it's already been compressed twice. So we'll see. Tips on EQ settings. Well, that for me has always been a subject of contention, because EQ settings, it really depends what setting are you playing in. So is this just playing at home? Is this rehearsal? Is this a live gig? Is this for recording? If it's a live gig, then you're totally dictated by the room or the venue that you're playing in, the stage you're on, and then how that room changes when people come in. So my preference personally is always to, if possible, and it's not always possible, but if you're using an active bass, to have a 3-band EQ. For many years, it was very much the thing that basses had bass and treble. They didn't have mid EQ. And now if you look at a lot of the 80s basses that don't have mid EQ, invariably you're going to want some. And you're either going to have to add it via the amplifier, or you might have a preamp pedal or an EQ pedal, or in some cases you can upgrade certain basses with mid EQ on the circuit. The reason for mid, or having mid EQ, is it really is the bass player's friend, because that will get you out of many tricky tonal situations. And I've been in plenty of them with basses that didn't have mid EQ, and you just get totally lost in a band mix. You can have all the bass and treble you like, and I've seen bass players turn everything up on full, and it's the most horrible, clicky, boomy bass sound. And I remember going to see a band at the Roadhouse about 10 years ago, and I'd never seen them before. I'd heard good things, and I went to see them, and the bass player basically, he had a Warwick Corvette, I think, and an Ashdown rig, and he just turned all the bass and treble on the bass and the rig on full. So all you ended up with was this mushy bass end with this clicky top end and no definition. And this is where mid really comes into its own, because if he just pulled back on both of those and had been able to give himself a little mid boost, you'd have heard the bass and it would have just cut through everything. So you kind of have to, it's not a case of being an expert with EQ, it's a case of knowing what to add and what to take away. And sometimes to make your bass project better, just take some of the bass EQ off, because a lot of the time bass EQ is going to give you power, but it's not going to give you any definition. And likewise, you might want to pull treble EQ back and just give yourself a little mid boost, which will suddenly make the bass sit in a band mix so much better, and actually help to sort of project the bass voice above sort of the top end that will be coming off guitars and bottom end that might be coming off a keyboard or bass drum or feedback from drums. And that can really just help. And generally I would want a bass with a 3-band EQ where possible. Obviously passive bass is a different thing entirely, but my preference is for a bass with 3-band EQ, and even better if it's got sweepable mids. So if I can move around the mid frequencies, I can find the sweet spot I need. That's why I had the John East Music Man circuit put in my Stingray. It was because that suddenly now has sweepable mids, and that gets out of a lot of holes. Okay, you're saying rehearsal rooms typically. Well, the problem in a rehearsal room is you've got a whole band playing in a very enclosed space, and trying to get other people to turn down can often be hard work. So again, I would always, in any situation, I tend to just set my EQ flat on the guitar, set the EQ flat on the bass, and what I want to do is be able to change things on the guitar rather than the amp. Some people do it the other way round. I always prefer to be in control of everything at the bass, so I don't have to keep turning round and looking at the amp or bending down and fiddling with controls. I'd rather just do it on the bass. No one's going to notice I'm doing it. And to be honest, a lot of the I say higher end, but that's not always the case. As you get above a certain price point with basses, you'll find the EQ tends to be better, and more well voiced to what that brand is, because generally the people building them have spent time trying to find the best match of circuit and pick up and how do they want that bass to sound. So generally I like to be able to do everything on the bass. So for example, on this GB, which we were talking about earlier, the only thing I miss on this is having a sweepable mid, and I've spoken to Bernie about it, and the only thing I can do is change the circuit, because the new GB circuit has got sweepable mids, but this one doesn't. I can change the frequency the mid is set at, which would involve the guy that does Bernie's electronics. He could change something on that circuit board, but it is what it is. So on this bass, I can switch between parallel and series operation. So for people that don't know, parallel will give you a slightly slimmer tone, less fat, so not totally removed from what a single coil pickup would sound like. Going into series gives you a beefier sound, so that is more akin to a humbucker sound, so everything's kind of boosted a bit more and the tone is more rounded, whereas with a single coil or parallel operation, it's going to be a slightly thinner sound, a bit more delicate. And then I have a 3-band EQ with boost and cut. I think it's 18 dB, 18 or 21, can't remember. Need to do my homework. And then obviously we've got pickup balance and volume. So for me, if I was taking this bass into a rehearsal, I'd set the amp flat, get my gain set. So generally for me, I don't want to be distorting. I want the gain as powerful as I can get without it clipping. And then you'd start to add in master volume. Then from that point, so the bass is flat, I would then perhaps give myself a small bass boost and a small treble boost, and then just see where we are. So if I need more glassiness for slapping, I might increase the treble, or I might just wind some of the bass back. So it just takes some of that bass EQ, because as you remove bass EQ, you're gaining in treble, and it works the other way as well. If you reduce your treble, you're gaining in bass, so you don't need to keep turning up that bass EQ. Then I will decide based on what I'm hearing, do I need to add mid for punch and definition? Treble won't give you definition necessarily. Treble will give you sort of cutting high, but the mid will give you definition. Now, the thing with mids is low mid will kind of make you sit in a mix better and will give you more power at the bottom end. Higher mid will high mid kind of, you've got to be a bit careful with it because it can sound really harsh and barking, but it can give you more presence. So it's kind of a balancing act. You've got to weigh up the other instruments you're playing with and what sound are you kind of trying to achieve. So you might find changing the strings will change how that sounds. For example, you might want to change. So if you're finding your mix is really sort of top end and clattery and a bit too noisy, you might want to move to maybe try nickel strings, or you might look at half wounds, and that'll give you less of the glassy sort of bitey top end without having to change the EQ. Then again, you might have nickel strings or half wounds or flats, and you think, I'm just not getting enough punch. In which case, maybe look at some steels and variations of. And again, the gauge can make a big difference. Alex will, I'm sure, will attest to this. You know, you can use 3090s, which will get you a very twangy, cutting sound, but you're not going to get a lot of bass in. If you go the opposite direction, you're using 4505s on a 4-string. You might find you're not getting any of that suppleness and clarity that you want. So you've got to go to a sort of happy medium. So maybe either go to a 4000 set or a 3595 set, or maybe mix up the gauges. There's nothing that says you can't. And many a player has experimented with sort of different gauge sizes for separate strings. I did the same with the Spectre. I use a slightly heavier top and a slightly lower bottom. So I'll use like I'll go 180, 65, 45. Just because I found the D and the G strings on the Spectre just were just too they weren't robust enough, or they just didn't feel robust enough. But if I went to a heavier gauge set, 4505, I found the E and the A were too big and bulky, and there was no suppleness to them. So I ended up going for a 45, 65, 80, 100 set on Spectres, and that worked for me. I know people do similar things with Stingrays, especially a 5-string. They might not necessarily go on a uniform set, so they might not go 45, 65, 85, 105, 125. They might go 130, 105, and then start playing around with the E, D, and G strings. It's experimenting, isn't it? And you can't necessarily always get that happy mix. Cheers, Stu. You got to go. Thank you very much for attending. Much appreciated. Yeah. So here we are. We've done nearly an hour and a half. I can see there are people still watching. So I think we're going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. Unless you've got a flurry of things you want to ask or contribute. If you have, get it there in the chat window and I'll respond to it as quick as I can. But otherwise, thank you very much for attending. It's been a pleasure. Hope you've enjoyed this. This is chat number 14. If you want to check out any of the other chats, just go to the live chat playlist on the channel and they're all there. A good friend of mine, Steve, if you're watching, bass playing friend, apologized for not attending last week's chat. But as he pointed out, and I hadn't thought of this, you can use these as podcasts. So if you have a long drive from somewhere and you want to listen to me wittering on for an hour or more each time, you can queue these live chats up on your playing device, whether that's your phone or anything else, and feel free. He said he was going to actually line all of these up and listen to them in the car. You poor sod. But yes, there's an option to use those as that. I won't be getting into podcast anytime soon because A, they're quite time intensive, and B, everyone is doing them at the moment. They seem to have become the trendy thing. And I've got enough on my plate trying to produce wonderful video content for you lovely people out there. So I think we'll do another live chat next Wednesday, which will be number 15. Same time, same place. I don't know what the topic of conversation is going to be. If I think I know what we want to do, I will post it up on the social media pages and also on the community tab here on the channel. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, hit the notification bell so you get notifications when I post up new videos. Feel free to leave any comments, any questions. If you need to contact me or ask me anything, you can do it via the community tab here on the channel, or you can find me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. It's Brooks's Bass Corner for Instagram and Facebook. Twitter is Brooks's Bass Co 1, as in the number 1. And that's where we are. So there will be a video going up either tomorrow, which is Thursday, or Friday. I have a feeling it's going to be the first part of the Billy Sheehan interview. I might change my mind and put a bass demo up, another soundbite demo. We will see. But the Billy Sheehan video the Billy Sheehan interview video is now going to be in several parts. It won't be one long interview. So you won't have to watch for an hour and 15 minutes. It will be in smaller chunks, which is a bit easier to watch and easier to digest. And next week, we've got more sound bites coming up. So on that note, I don't see any more questions or interaction on the chat window. So thank you very much for attending. If you've enjoyed it, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you for joining us. If you're listening to this at a later date, I hope you've enjoyed the video. And take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, and I will see you next week. Take it easy. Cheers. Oh, Stacey, you've just done a super chat. Thank you very much. Stacey from North Carolina has just contributed to the channel via the super chat button. Thank you very much. That is very much appreciated. For anyone that wants to help the channel and how we progress and contribute to the funding of it, you can hit that dollar button at the bottom of the chat window, and that helps the channel no end. So thank you very much. I will see you all next week, hopefully. Look after yourselves. All the best. Cheers. Bye-bye.